What's up, guys? Welcome to Think Aside. Today, I want to talk about something that I've been kind of thinking a lot about lately. I say that quite often, but there's a lot of things that kind of oftentimes go along or go on in my head. And, with the way that things are going right now with the price of gas and all of these things, it's got me thinking a lot about how much we rely on convenience. And when I say rely on convenience, I mean rely on the things that make convenience for us. And, that might be the truckers, right, delivering our goods. That might be the boats bringing it, the fuel that it takes. It might be the chicken that we get from the store, the bread, whatever it is, eggs. I was at the store the other day. I live in northern Maine, and it went from, we used to pay $1.87 to like $2. It was $3.87 for just 12 eggs. That's double the price. So it kind of got me thinking a lot, and me and my wife has been thinking a lot about like chickens and things like that, and just becoming more reliant. We have a garden this year, or, working on it. I know it's getting kind of late, but um, there's so many aspects to life that we kind of rely on external forces. We rely on the supply chains to provide for us, because that's kind of how we've built it. Is we're no longer a society that need to go and forage or anything like that, gather. We can just go to the store and get everything that we need. But what happens when that store no longer has what we need? What happens when they run out of all of those things? I mean, we've seen it happen. We continue to see it happen with toilet paper. We saw it happen with all these different things. You have like hand sanitizer. When people went crazy about that, those were more people buying it up. But what happens when the supply chains stop as well? So I wanted to make a video on that specifically. Is what happens when we no longer have that convenience? Do we instead kind of just give up? I'm fighting off mosquitoes while I'm in the woods here. Do we just give up, or do we find other ways to manage it? Do we have our own chickens? Do we grow our own garden? Do we learn how to make our own bread? Do we learn how to repair our own vehicle and possibly put up solar panels for energy? And where's our line? What do we decide to do, and what do we decide to just give up on? And there's a point where we can just live more simply, and that's probably ideal, especially right now. But I wanted to point out that a lot of things can be done. A lot of things that we kind of rely on other places for, we can very much go and build up that sustaining those sustaining things for ourselves. So knowing that a lot of the things we rely on we can do ourselves, whether it's make bread or even with fuel. We look at fuel and how like we pay oil, right? We buy oil, or we buy pellets for our stove, or pellet stove, or electric heaters. Excuse me. But where's that energy come from? We either buy the oil from another place, or we buy pellets from a store. Some of us do have wood stoves, and which is arguably really good. It does come with its own inconveniences, of course, because you can't leave the house with it running, just like a pellet stove, things like that. But you notice with like the electric heaters, you think, well, it's just electricity, right? But what happens when the electricity becomes so expensive that you can't afford it? What happens when the electricity grid goes down because too many people are doing exactly that, going to electric everything, right? So I think it was like Texas at one point that had too many. It was so hot that air conditioners were running and stuff in all the households or something like that, and it ended up crashing the grid. Like they ended up needing repairs and all that stuff. So something to think about, right? Is that when that happens, what do we do? Well, there are multiple ways that we can learn to be more self-sustaining, and I encourage every one of you guys to start doing that more and more, because unfortunately it's going to be a life that's almost required more and more, at least for the next couple of years, at the bare minimum, unless you guys are making tons of money and can just wade through it. You have a bunch of assets that inflate with inflation and all that stuff. And that's wonderful. But for those of you who are relying solely on fiat money, every week or every 2 weeks or every month, whatever. I encourage even the ones that are well off to prepare for the possibility that the fiat money crashes. Right? What if the U.S. dollar loses all of its value, and then next thing you know, everything you have is worth nothing. So now you can't go and buy anything, and even if you could buy something, it's not there. So that's something to consider. Is we need to be more self-reliant. I mean, it's kind of weird that we went from people that were homesteaders, you know what I mean? Like we went and settled down and built our own house and did all of that, and then next thing you know, we slowly rely more and more on the store. And I'm not saying that even now that we don't go to the store. I'm not saying that we don't buy our eggs from the store if you don't want to grow your own chickens or whatever. I'm not saying that you shouldn't buy chicken or beef or steak or all those things from. Ooh, that's a big. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do those things. What I'm saying is that we shouldn't solely rely on them. Instead, we should see them as a convenience. We should see them as a as a privilege. And so instead of relying on those things to make our lives livable, to live, to survive, instead we see those things as, okay, well, they're nice while we have them, but if we don't have them, we'll be okay. And that's what I'm trying to convey, is that we really need to be more self-reliant. We've talked about in the past self-reliance and how, when you work from someone or when you put the responsibility in the government's hands and stuff like that, how long until they benefit themselves instead of you first, that kind of stuff. But it's the same kind of thing with this, except for it's our livelihood, it's our survival. We need to rely on ourselves. For next thing you know, it's going to be very, very difficult for a lot of us, and it probably will be anyway, but we should start now, so that way, it's like that saying, I think it was possibly John F. Kennedy, I'm not sure who said it, but the best time to repair a roof is when it's sunny outside, right? When the sun is shining, I believe is how he worded it. Excuse me. And so that's something to keep in mind, is that we shouldn't wait until we need, say, the chickens to get them. We shouldn't wait till we need the cow to get the cow, or we shouldn't wait to get the solar panels when we have no electricity. We should do that now, because what's going to happen is if those things end up being necessary for our survival, we're going to find out that everyone else is going to be going for them too, right? And what happens last time? Well, we talked about the toilet paper. When everyone wanted toilet paper, there was no toilet paper. It's the same kind of ideas. If everyone wants solar panels, if they all need them all at once, they realize that, this is a good energy source, what's going to happen? Well, they're going to all buy it, and it's going to be out of stock or very hard to come by. And look at graphics cards, if you guys are techie at all. Graphics cards, because of the Bitcoin mining and because of the chip shortage and a mixture of those things, ended up making them very, very expensive for those who got them, because those who did get them first were able to just price market up and price gouge. They were able to sell them for far, far more money. And so to avoid that, we need to think ahead, right? We need to think aside the idea that we are completely reliant on the government or reliant on all of those things. But that's kind of the point here, is, rely more, strive to rely more on yourself and less on other people and less on the supply chains, and, learn those things for ourselves. Thank you.